Hi everyone, I'm sorry that I can't be with you to celebrate 2 decades of marriage equality in Massachusetts, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity to join and deliver a message. I want to begin by thanking GLAD, Mass Equality, the History Project, Centerline Liberties, and Civitas Public Affairs for bringing everyone together in a place that's meant so much to our community. You know, there are so many reasons to be proud of Massachusetts. We're a state of firsts. The first public school and library, public park, the first railroad and subway and lighthouse. But Massachusetts was the first to guarantee that love is love. And that's incredible. That was huge, not just for couples in our state, but across the country and around the world. Massachusetts proved that LGBTQ+ people deserve the same rights and freedoms as everyone else. Today, the institution of marriage is alive and well, and stronger even. And other states did as they always do. They followed our lead because of the hard work of people in this room, lawyers, plaintiffs, advocates, couples and families who bravely shared their stories. Because of that, marriage equality is now the law of the land. Many of you are here to celebrate a hard-fought victory and are also preparing to do what we need to do to protect rights and freedoms. So I want to end by speaking directly to any young person who's out there tonight. You will make your own firsts, and you will write your own history. And know that you will always be loved, welcome, and celebrated here in Massachusetts. Thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of the celebration. And a particularly big shout out to my good friend and your great champion, our great champion, Mary Bonauto.
Welcome to Arlington Street Church. Welcome to the room where it happened. More is happening. I'm going to invite you to take the postcard from your pew and know that you are always welcome here. To those of you who work to bring marriage equality to fruition, it is wonderful to be together again. And to all who continue to work for justice, thank you. Leading up to this day 20 years ago, I was facing a very big problem. The final line of the wedding service begins, and now, by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I practiced and practiced, but I always burst into tears. I'd try it in the car and weep. I'd try it at the dinner table. Our daughters grew concerned. Say it, Mommy. I'd try. I'd cry. I will admit to you now that when David and Rob stood here 20 years ago, surrounded by 86 news outlets, the whole world was watching. I had yet to make it past by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But something truly extraordinary happened. I started in bravely, and this room erupted. The noise was deafening. David's father, our beloved Leonard, rose to his feet. And somehow, all that joy, all that love brought me just enough strength to power me through to the end by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I hereby pronounce you legally married. The earth shifted on its axis. If you are legally married, please join me in honoring our plaintiff couples. Happy anniversary to you, to my beautiful wife, Kim, to the 55 couples who are married here with us 3 days later. I close with the words I read to begin many of our weddings from the decision of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court written by Chief Justice Margaret Marshall. Marriage is a vital social institution. The question before us is whether, consistent with the Massachusetts Constitution, the Commonwealth may deny the protections, benefits, and obligations conferred by civil marriage to two individuals of the same sex who wish to marry. We conclude that it may not. And let the people say amen.
Greetings. My name is Marc Solomon, and I'm honored to be here with you today. Happy 20th anniversary, Massachusetts. Happy 20th and happy 20th anniversary, America. I want to thank Governor Healey for her leadership in fighting for the freedom to marry as Attorney General. Her personal story as a proudly out lesbian governor shows how far our community and our country have come. And a huge thank you to Reverend Kim Crawford Harvie and Arlington Street Church for hosting this event today. The Unitarian Universalist Association and Arlington Street Church have always been a home for our community. From the earliest days of the marriage campaigns when we used to strategize with Arlene and everybody next door to the State House at the Unitarian headquarters to today. So on behalf of all of the hosts of this event, GLBTQ legal advocates and defenders, better known as GLAD, Mass Equality, the History Project, Centerline, we are so excited to be here with you today. I am proud to have served as Executive Director of Mass Equality during the campaign to protect the freedom to marry here in Massachusetts. And as some of you know, I went on to serve as National Campaign Director of Freedom to Marry until we shut down as promised after we won nationwide in 2015. But what I will never forget was the day in 2001 when I walked into a meeting of the all-volunteer Freedom to Marry Coalition of Massachusetts at the Boston Living Center. I want to thank, and some of you are here and some of you aren't, but I'm going to thank anyway, Valerie Fine-Zachary and Robert DeBenedictis for your leadership of that very powerful grassroots group. Back then, I hadn't been out of the closet for long and I was nervous. But like many of you, I'd participated in the marriages of some of my closest friends recently, around that time. And what I saw, or what I felt, was a real mix. I felt deep happiness for them and that they'd found the person of their dreams and were getting married. And I felt real happiness that their community and their government was celebrating that marriage. But I also felt a pain inside of me that my marriage couldn't be celebrated back then. And so I was so happy to join that fight in 2001. It was among the best, most profound things I've ever done. And it's a fight that I stuck with for 15 years. I was particularly inspired by couples that had been together for 20, 30, 40 years, enduring discrimination, fearing arrest at gay bars, but not wavering from the love and commitment that was so central to them, and demonstrating the power and depth of their relationships. And I've got to say, I'm looking out right now at half of one couple that especially inspired me. Ralph Hodgson is right there in the Some of you might remember seeing Ralph and his late husband, Paul, at Pride celebrations holding their handmade sign that said 48 years together, 49 years together, with photos on the back from milestones in their relationship. Ralph and Paul inspired us, proof that our relationships could endure, even through discrimination and adversity. I remember 1 year later, their sign read, 50 years together, married for one. So Ralph and Paul would have been celebrating their 69-year anniversary together later this month, and it's such an honor that you're here with us to celebrate today. Back 20 years ago, not many elected officials stood with us, neither Republicans nor Democrats, but we had some truly courageous ones who were with us every step of the way. I want to acknowledge one of our heroes, the late Alice Wolfe from Cambridge. Who championed our cause for so many years. Joining us today are some real champions. I got to see Representative David Linsky from Needham, right? Am I remember? Natick, okay, sorry, Natick. My Massachusetts 351 cities and town memory is not what it used to be. I want to thank a guy who was a huge backer of the incredible work that then Speaker Sal DeMacy did, and is now one of the leaders of, so thank you to Sal for sure. His staffer, Aaron Michalowicz, is now one of the leaders in the State House of Representatives. Aaron is here with us today. I want to thank Representatives John Moran, Jack Lewis. You can clap for each and all of them. Today's the day that deserves lots of claps. Adrienne Ramos, Samantha Montano. Then we have some staff. We have Grace Simmons from Representative Mindy Dom's office. We have Dr. Robbie Goldstein, who's the Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. April English from Governor Healey's office. And there is one rep who I am missing, whose name is not... Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much for being here. I know the worst thing to do is to miss an elected official, so I will not do that. Arlene would hold that over me. And I think that Mayor Denise Simmons is here. If she's not, she deserves a big applause, even if she's not here. In 2006, in the midst of our fight to defend our decision to persuade 150 out of 200 lawmakers to stand with us against the constitutional amendment to take marriage away, we had an incredibly fortuitous event. Deval Patrick was elected governor. In Deval, we had a passionate fighter for civil and equal rights, and his vision of those rights included our community front and center. It was quite the contrast from his predecessor, who voted with us on the Respect for Marriage Act 2 years ago. Even before Deval was inaugurated, he took to the phones and reached out to lawmakers who were on the fence. And throughout 2007, his very first year in office, our cause was front and center for him. And I'm going to recognize the great senator from Acton and other such places, Jamie Eldridge, right there. For Deval, in 2007, his very first year, our cause was front and center for him. He'd call lawmakers into his office. His approach was not Lyndon Johnson-style arm twisting. It was listening carefully, acknowledging the perspectives of different lawmakers from all over the Commonwealth, making his case in ways that they could take it in, staying engaged, always having an open door, and sticking with us till the end. Deval, we could not have done it without you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. It is so good to be with everybody this morning at last. Like a lot of you, I am here in the spirit of gratitude. So I want to say thank you. to you, Marc, and the many advocates who strategized, worked so hard at the grassroots, and persisted through progress and setbacks. I want to thank the funders who kept supporting them even when victory seemed too hard to imagine. I want to thank the members of the faith community who brought such a strong moral counterpart to the opponents, who kept reminding us that hate comes from Satan, love and only love comes from God. To the allies, the friends and families and total strangers who stayed at our sides, who held us up, and whose patience, like that of our youngest child, KP, who was not a spouse, a parent, a psychologist, or even out 20 years ago, who gave us the room not just to learn, but to understand that love is love. To the lawyers and paralegals and their exceptionally brave clients, who exemplified that the Constitution means nothing unless and until somebody stands up in a court somewhere and gives it life. To Chief Justice Margaret Marshall and the members of the Goodrich Court, who stood not upon politics, but upon the enduring democratic principle that even when we seek something as ordinary as a marriage license, each of us comes before our government as equals. To the elected and appointed officials, those here and those who could not be here, who understood that both good government and good conscience should never permit discrimination once excised to become a part of our laws again. I think I speak for many here and many who are not in expressing how grateful I am to each and every one of you. And as governor, I was proud to have been a part of this struggle and a part of this cause. I'm proud that Massachusetts is the first state in America where you could marry whomever you love. And I'm proud that the power of that example has reverberated across the country. I think I've always wondered, naively, some of you tell me, why marriage equality generated so much pushback then. I understand the weight of tradition and the way some interpret scripture, but I wondered then, as I do now, why others' choices to live and love as they wish represents a threat to my own choices. Social justice and civil rights are not about the special pleadings of one group, one unique demographic. The chance to live as your whole selves is not a yearning of just some people and not others. Justice is not in limited supply to be apportioned to some at the expense of others. In a fundamental way, your cause has always been mine, just as mine is also yours. So as we celebrate today, I would ask you to reflect also on what the Goodrich milestone means or ought to mean, and what this struggle means or ought to mean for the lives still waiting to be affirmed, because we have unfinished work to do. We have work to do to have parents in same-sex marriages treated as parents, without all the hassles and barriers and skepticism. We have work to do to assure that trans people have the support and the safety to live their whole lives. And in that same spirit, we have work to do to assure that migrants and the unhoused and Black and brown people and poor people of every type and background have the chance to live their whole selves and make a way for themselves and their families. The forces of darkness make a lot of us feel discouraged right now, maybe some of you. Hostility and hate feel so out in the open. But I know that the very objective of those dark forces is to leave us feeling discouraged, to drain us of hope. It's worth remembering today and every day what we learned from the struggle for marriage equality. that it turns out there are more of us than there are of them. There are many, many more people of good conscience than there are forces of darkness. We just need to engage not just on the airwaves, but at the curbside, across the fence, neighbor to neighbor. It took a court doing the right thing, but it took lots and lots of ordinary people who chose not just to rail at the darkness, but to light a candle themselves. Happy anniversary.
Thank you so much, Deval. Our movement has always been centered on real families and real stories, so much so that our legal hero, Mary Bonauto, couldn't be here today. And she couldn't be here today because her twins are graduating from college this weekend. She told me I could bother her up until Thursday, but she was shutting it down after then. We're going to hear from Mary later in a video she filmed just for this event, and you can read her words in your program. But I have no doubt that she and her family will be watching, so let's give Mary and her family, who sacrificed more than any of us can imagine for this fight, a huge round of applause. Our movement has always been about love and commitments, and our power has been centered on our willingness to step out of our comfort zones and share our personal stories to the press, to lawmakers, to the world. No one did that with more power or dignity than the 7 plaintiff couples that participated in the Goodrich lawsuits. Speaking for those 7 is a couple that married right here at Arlington Street Church 20 years ago today, about an hour ago or so. It was officiated by none other than Reverend Kim Crawford Harvie. David Wilson and Rob Compton knew that they, an interracial couple, would be subject to attacks and extra scrutiny, but that wasn't enough to deter them from being part of making history for the LGBTQ community. David served as my board chair at Mass Equality. I love that man, and I love this couple. Please welcome them.
Here we go. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Mark. My dear friend, an ally and partner in this freedom to marry struggle. He had my back every day on the days where I wasn't sure what was the next step ahead. Thanks to all of you for being here today. We appreciate your support, and hopefully at the end of our story, we can say thank you one more time. It's our honor to represent the 14 plaintiffs that were the names and faces of the fight for marriage across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Before I share a few words about our story, I want to recognize the plaintiff families that are here, and we're so glad you were here today with us. Mike Horrigan, Ed Belmelli. Maureen Wade and Ellen Brodoff. And, yeah, I got it. And I certainly can't forget their daughter, Kate. Kate, will you stand? Gary Chalmers. And for our plaintiffs that are not with us today, Linda and Gloria Bailey Davies, Richard Linnell, Gina and Heidi Norton-Smith, Hillary Goodridge, and Julie Goodridge. And we have one more plaintiff couple that were part of GLAD's first DOMA case, Betty Jo Green and Joanne Whitehead. Are you with us? Please stand. Okay, that part's over. 20 years ago today, our 7 plaintiff couples were married across the state of Massachusetts after the historic decision by Chief Justice Margaret Marshall. We were finally able to celebrate our love and commitment to each other and to have our respect by the state as a right to our families and the same basic protections that everyone else had. For Rob and me, our journey for legal marriage began right here on October 8th, 2000, when we had a commitment ceremony, which was presided by Reverend Kim Crawford Harvie. I'm guessing a few GLAD attorneys were present at that commitment ceremony. And I'm guessing they took a look at us guys and said, maybe they'd be willing to be part of the fight going forward. So after several meetings, which I thought were actually interviews, we decided to join the Goodridge marriage case. Fast forward to the morning of May 17th, when the late Mayor Menino celebrated that morning with a reception at City Hall. We were there to get our marriage licenses, which we did. We took a brief walk to the courthouse to get a 3-day waiver. But our walk was interrupted by a stalker. I said, "Who are you?" She said, "I'm here to see Mary." I said, "Mary who?" And with no answer, the police took her away. After a quick trip across town, Rob and I were upstairs getting dressed for our wedding, and out of the restroom came the same stalker. So I said, "What are you here for?" She said, "I just want to be a part of your day." So I said, "Oh, you're a groupie." But since she wasn't invited, the police took her away. My memory starts to wane as we're thinking about what happened next. So Rob and I went down the stairs, and what I remember is our son Scott standing at the back of the church, talking to our grandsons, Tyler, who was 5, and Colby, who was 3. And Scott said, "Now, guys, hold the rings in this hand and hold each other in the other hand." I'm listening to Scott saying this to the boys. I could feel my legs starting to shake, but they started down the aisle, and I was so proud to watch them get to the end. But then I knew it was our turn. So Rob and I started down the aisle, and obviously people were saying hello. We kept our heads straight ahead, but I got to the last pew, and I looked to the right, and there was Mary Bonauto. We locked eyes. She broke into tears. I said, "I know I'm in trouble." We'll never make it to the end when Mary, who has been our shero, our mentor, our leader, is bawling in the front row. The gay men's chorus started singing Everything Possible. We exchanged our rings. We exchanged our vows. And as Kim said earlier, she said, by the power vested in me, the church erupted. People were clapping and banging on the tables, banging on the floor. And I thought, when is this going to end? So I listened carefully for what I thought was going to be next. And Kim said, partners for life, legally married. And I thought, we made it. But my next thought was, how do we get back down the aisle and out the front door? Fortunately, we had two Marys. Mary Breslauer said to us, you stand right here. I'm going to clear the aisle, clear the back door, give me 5 minutes. Mary came back in and she said, go for it. So we ran down the aisle and out the front door and we were married. Since that day, Rob and I have attended a wedding in High Point, North Carolina, for our nephew Jason and his wife-to-be, Emily. And I do want to say I was a little cautious about going to North Carolina as an out, gay, married, interracial couple. So when we got to the church, Rob quickly told me that he was going to be the videographer for the wedding. So I thought, well, where am I going to sit? So I went to the second pew and sat down. And within 5 minutes, someone slid in next to me and put their arm in my arm. And she said, I'm Auntie Gina. I said, well, it's nice to meet you. And she said, well, I'm so proud of you guys, but I just want to tell you, I'm the chair of the Republican committee in High Point. And I said, well, Gina, why don't we just enjoy the wedding? And as the wedding ended, she said, do you want to take a walk? I want to show you the premises. I thought, Rob, where are you? We have to get out of here. Later that day, we went to the reception, and Jason pulled a fast one on us, pushed some buttons, and said to the band, can you play It's Raining Men? So a rare moment for Rob, we got on the dance floor, and we screamed and yelled with everyone, It's Raining Men. We got out of there that night, and the next morning, Emily called us to say, I just want to tell you, one of my bridesmaids came out to me last night. She's going with another bridesmaid in the wedding party. So I think we changed a few hearts and minds in High Point, North Carolina. About a decade later, Rob and I flew to California to be part of Brian and Carlo's wedding. I was prepared to deliver Margaret Marshall's famous quote. About 7 in the morning, Brian called me and he said, can we change out that quote? I said, why? I have my speech, I'm ready to go. He said, Anthony Kennedy, we need his quote. I said, why? That was the day that Obergefell came down. So we were part of a wedding on the day of Obergefell. So we went to the wedding. I still gave Margaret Marshall credit. And then I obviously used a Kennedy quote. The best of the best for us was when Rob's daughter Jackie asked us to participate in her wedding. I married Jackie that day. Rob gave her away, and we were in Laramie, Wyoming. If that wasn't good enough, that afternoon, Jackie quieted the whole reception and said, "I want to introduce you to my two dads who fought for the right to marry each other." I was looking around, I was hoping somebody would start clapping. Jackie and James did, and we got quite a round of applause, but this is still in Laramie, Red, Wyoming. Today, we still have unfinished business, especially as we think about the work that's been done and the work that's ahead, because we want to make sure that our rights don't get turned back. Rob and I firmly believe that our personal stories and your personal stories will continue to move hearts and minds and the courts to make sure that marriages will endure for generations to come. We're helping with those generations. Our blended family is 4 generations. Rob and I have 5 adult children, 12 grandchildren, ranging in age from 5 to 35, and 3 great-grandchildren, ranging in age from 2 to 6. Our family are telling their stories about their papas who fought to get married. So I want to thank each and every one of you for all of the support you've given us over the years, not just 20 for us, but at least 27 going back to the very beginning. And I want to thank you for coming today to be part of this celebration. So thank you so much on behalf of Rob and me. Yeah. So my last duty here was to talk about Mary Bonauto, but I think that's already been done by Marc. But Mary has put together a video, and it's a chance for Mary to celebrate with us, thank all of you, and wish all of us a happy 20th anniversary. Mary Bonauto.
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Bonauto. I'm sorry I can't be with you all to celebrate this amazing anniversary today. What people long thought was impossible, including in our own community, has now been the law of Massachusetts for 20 years. Of course, it was a long journey to get from the vision of equal marriage to the joyous reality. Here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we treasure our plaintiffs from the Goodridge case as people and as couples for their courage and commitment and for showing the world what love and justice looks like for same-sex couples. I appreciate my GLAD colleagues and all of the amici and their attorneys who shared their expertise with the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court in amicus briefs. Winning and defending marriage equality in Massachusetts was a team effort on a colossal scale. I know many of you who worked so hard are in this room today. We showed the nation that marriage equality was here to stay in the United States. That win showed what we can do when we talk about our lives, we learn about other people's lives, when we invite people in and talk to them, even with noisy scare tactics and demonization around us. The road to nationwide marriage equality at the United States Supreme Court in 2015 was paved through the states. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts and its people were absolutely essential. Just as this victory was not inevitable, it is not invincible either. We know there are those who would like to revisit marriage and other legal rights we've won over the years. So I ask you to remember, as we invest in our communities, so do they invest in us. Creating the common good takes effort. And that's more than a two-way street. It's a busy intersection of listening, learning, stretching, and supporting our issues and others' issues as well. If we're about people, families, and communities thriving, and we are, and if we are about freedom, opportunity, equity, and justice, and we are, then be there for your whole diverse community. We must defend truth in so many ways. One of those truths is the inherent dignity, full equality, and common humanity of transgender people. 20 years on from May 17, 2004, we know how much protection comes with marriage, with being understood as a family, and with being valued as part of the fabric of the state. So, happy anniversary. Enjoy this celebration today. And please, let's keep working. We know what to do. And clearly, there is so much more to do. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Joan Ilacqua, and I'm the Executive Director of the History Project. And we are Boston's LGBTQ+ community archives. I'm going to say all of the letters and the initialism out loud. I don't think anyone has yet. So we are the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community archives. Laws criminalizing same-sex relationships and expansive gender presentation have been on the books in Massachusetts since the Pilgrims landed. Regardless of puritanical sentiments, queer people have always been here, and we have always made space and made community for ourselves. Our archives holds records about the legal fights for gay rights, from the 1989 Gay Rights Bill, to laws protecting queer youth and families, to protections for the trans community, and about the fights that are continuing today. We also have stories from community members whose relationships and marriages weren't legally recognized. These stories include women like Annie Fields and Sarah Orne Jewett, women who were in a Boston marriage at the end of the 1800s. Boston marriages, for those who don't know, are sapphic relationships that sometimes lasted for decades. These stories also include unrecognized marriage ceremonies, some of which took place here at Arlington Street Church in the 1970s. We even have a lesbian wedding that took place at Fran's Place in Lynn in 1987 in the archives. Today, the History Project is calling on the community to share their marriage stories, which you can do at historyproject.org/marriage. And I wanted to share my story. I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up in Plymouth, speaking of pilgrims. I was 15 years old when same-sex marriage became legal. And as a teenager, I sat in church every week listening to sermons about the dangers of homosexuality and the redefinition of marriage. But in 2018, my wife Sarah and I had a small guerrilla ceremony in the public garden. I think the statute of limitations on not getting a permit is over. No one tell Michelle. But that day we made history for ourselves. And I really encourage you to share your story too. You never know who's out there looking for queer love and joy. So congratulations all, thank you for your work. And again, congratulations on a momentous 20th anniversary of marriage equality.
Thank you, Joan, for your powerful words. As Mary shared in her video, the Massachusetts victory was part of a movement that was years in the making before then. My own mentor in this work, Evan Wolfson, wrote his Harvard Law School thesis in 1983 on why same-sex couples should be able to marry. But he almost didn't because he had a really hard time finding an advisor who would take him on, thinking that it was so quixotic and impossible. I also want to acknowledge two extraordinarily powerful advocates here in Massachusetts, Arlene Isaacson and Gary Daffin, and Arlene is right here with us. Can you stand up? Arlene is co-chair of the Massachusetts LGBTQ caucus. For many lawmakers in the 80s and 90s, Arlene was the only gay or lesbian person that they knew. She was advocating for our community way before many of us were out. She won adoption of the Gay Civil Rights Bill in 1989, and she's stuck with it to this day. Lobbying, I think, for the Massachusetts Parentage Act, right? Marty Rouse, who couldn't be here today, was the first leader of Mass Equality, and he taught all of us here about relentless campaigning and the power of building a deep grassroots movement for marriage. I want to acknowledge the Religious Coalition for the Freedom to Marry. That was an extraordinarily powerful entity. I saw Charles Martel, who is here, there's Charles, who was a leader of that effort. And I can't tell you how important it was, both politically and spiritually, for all of us to have so many different denominations represented on our side of this. The ACLU of Massachusetts, represented here by Holly Gunner. Holly, where are you? And of course, the indefatigable, but couldn't be here, the indefatigable Norma Shapiro, who was always pounding the pavement in the State House. There are other key leaders of Mass Equality who are here. The then board chair of GLAD, Johanna Schulman, is here with us. Robin Oakes, who is one of the most important national bisexual leaders, is here. Michael Henry, who's been at it for a long time and continues to be board chair of Mass Equality. Ellen Zucker, who is board chair of Mass Equality. Some transgender leaders, including Holly Ryan, is here today, who are fierce advocates in this fight. I also want to acknowledge that we wouldn't have gotten where we did without straight leaders who came out in support of our cause way before it was cool to do so. I want to acknowledge Chris Gabrielli, who's here with us right now. Chris was publicly in support of marriage equality way back in 2002 when he was a candidate for lieutenant governor, and literally helped open the doors for us to the business and civic community here in Massachusetts. They couldn't be here with us, but Steve and Barbara Grossman also played a similar role. Marcia Hams and Susan Shepard, are you here? So, Marcia and Susan were the very, very, very first couple in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and in the history of America to get a marriage license as a same-sex couple. And their son, Peter, starred in my favorite Mass Equality ad that we ever did, The Hockey Player. I remember showing that to, in focus groups with sort of middle-income folks on the South Shore, and listening to people saying, they don't seem so bad. They're just a hockey player. So I also want to lift up our amazing documentarians, photographers, Susan Simons, who's photographing this event today, and Marilyn Humphreys. I have done my best, and I'm sure I've missed out about 15 of you, so please accept my apologies if I missed your name. But what's most important about this movement is that it's been a movement. The heart and soul of this was, of course, the couples and individuals and allies who shared their stories and made their case. Regular people willing to step out of their comfort zones and talk to lawmakers, to the press, to the world, answering questions that sometimes we're like, really? Is that really your question? But doing it with grace and dignity and respect. I want to acknowledge my partner in the Massachusetts and Mass Equality work, who organized what became the most powerful field army I've ever seen, one powerful enough to defeat the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, among others, my dear friend Amy Mello. Well, Amy's waving in the back, modest as always. I also want to acknowledge people like Diane DiCarlo, who organized same-sex couples on the South Coast. Diane, are you here? Paul Mione, who organized what I considered for a long time, our Bermuda Triangle, from Quincy to Brockton to Plymouth. And then, and then when he couldn't, I want to acknowledge Kathy Godbout, who, with her husband Lee, I can't tell you, sorted and cut tens of thousands of blue postcards. Kathy, we're so grateful for your leadership. And then there are just so many others. So what I want to do is I want to ask anybody who took action for marriage equality back in those early days of 2000 to 2007, please stand up or raise your hand if you shared your story, knocked on doors, called your lawmaker, attended a rally, photographed, had conversations, or anything. Please. Really, really moving and profound. It was your work that enabled us to re-elect every lawmaker who stood with us, to defeat a few lawmakers who opposed us, and to make our lawmakers know that we weren't going to go away until our dignity and equality were respected with the freedom to marry. Those stories are really what helped people in Massachusetts and later across the country evolve, and encouraging people to reflect and giving them space to change their minds is one crucial element of social justice movements and one of the proudest legacies of the marriage movement that I want to honor today. And one of those lawmakers who went through a heartfelt rethinking of the issue was Paul Kujawski, better known as Cujo, who I'm very proud to introduce. There you are.
Thank you, Mark. I'm 70 years old, so I need glasses. This is my story. Marc Solomon and I were wrapping up our initial conversation in my office when he said, "I have to make you aware that according to the statistics calculated by Mass Equality, you represent the most conservative anti-gay district in the state." And yes, I was one of those statistics. But then I embarked on a journey that began in my ears and concluded in the chamber of the Massachusetts House of Representatives, but more importantly, in my heart. As a devout practicing Catholic, the thought of supporting marriage equality never entered my mind. Frankly, this date 20 years ago confused the ever-living daylights out of me. We'll fast forward a bit to 3 years later, 2007. While driving back to Webster from a golf outing with one of my college baseball teammates, Mark Stefanik, he asked if I would consider meeting with a group from the First Congregational Church in Dudley to discuss same-sex marriage. Reluctantly, I agreed. Approximately 15 people gathered at Mark's home for 3+ hours of listening to real-life experiences that left me deeply moved. Pastor John White and two incredible individuals, Deb Gribb and Sharon Murphy, led a discussion that opened my eyes to what people had to endure simply for the pursuit and desire to live a life of happiness. My communication between Deb and Sharon became frequent and personal. Their story had a profound impact on my feelings and certainly my outlook. I began asking myself, who am I? Who am I to deny or jeopardize loving human beings from the same happiness and dignity that has been afforded to myself and my family? I learned from a couple in Douglas who relocated from the Western United States that one of them was involved in a very serious car crash. Her partner was prohibited from any information regarding her health and condition because of legalities of not being related. I found this incomprehensible. I learned from the daughter of a former legislator who passionately requested that I oppose the question to allow her daughter the same rights as she and I have. All the time knowing that her father, who was a legislator, was so anti-gay that he wouldn't enter the same bathroom with Barney Frank. I received a call from a son of a former deceased teaching colleague who served our country in the Marine Corps to ask that I honor his father's memory and vote in opposition to assure his gay brother's rights. Sue Tracy and Pat Guerrero, former colleagues of mine in the House, came to my office, and Sue Tracy presented me with a picture of her 11-year-old son in a Little League uniform. She knew that I coached Little League for 23 years. She knew how to really get to me. I shared so many of these stories with my wife and sons who could see and feel my emotional struggle to do what was right. On the morning of the Constitutional Convention, I was the subject of a front-page story in the Boston Globe written by Lisa Wagner. When being interviewed for the story in my office, I asked Lisa why I was the subject of that article. She said, because I was told you would be honest and you would tell the truth. During the questioning between Lisa and I, emotional levels rose to the point where we both broke into tears and hugged each other. I brought the story here today for anyone who wants to see, and those postcards that Marc talked about earlier, I've got stacks and stacks of them on the front page of the paper on my desk. So, when the story appeared that morning, several of my colleagues who were struggling as much as I was either called or came to my office to confirm how I was going to vote. At least 5 members who were on the bubble all agreed that they would follow my lead. That morning, I walked with Governor Patrick into the State House confirming my vote. Prior to being summoned to the chamber, several of my colleagues gathered in the office of Lyda Harkins of Needham. Lyda was an unsung hero who kept members on track and away from the opposition. I walked into the chamber with then Senator Mike Morrissey. Both of us were shaking like a leaf. He changed his vote. I changed my vote. All of the others who confirmed they would did the same. The vote was 141 to 45, and the 50-vote threshold. The 50-vote threshold to put the question on the ballot was defeated by 5 votes, all the same number of votes who changed on the last day to follow my lead. Upon leaving the chamber, the very first 2 people who I miraculously walked into were Deb and Sharon. They didn't have access to the vote. When I told them that I supported their request, we embraced and cried. So today, as Deb is fighting to conquer the disease of cancer, I dedicate my remarks to her and ask that you all keep her in your thoughts and prayers. Congratulations to all who have enjoyed the past 20 years of marriage equality. May you live with dignity and in happiness and love. And thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
I think that Cujo's remarks are one of the most crucial lessons of our fights. Treating those who aren't supportive of marriage not as enemies who are unalterably against you, but as people who are just not there yet, is crucial to changing hearts and minds. And that doesn't just apply to marriage, it applies to transgender non-discrimination, it applies to every social movement. We need to continue to engage, we need to find and identify the right messengers and make our case. And that is, nothing embodies that story more than Cujo. And I do want to tell you, if I'm allowed to tell the story, Paul called me on his 70th birthday and said, Mark, you're not going to believe, he's like, you won't even believe what you've done to me. I'm celebrating my 70th birthday in Provincetown. Next up, I want to welcome a strong ally to this fight, David Friedman. 20 years ago, Dave was chief counsel to the Senate president, who wasn't an ally, but Dave was one of those people who gave us crucial advice about how to navigate Beacon Hill. Sometimes he told us secrets and said, don't tell anybody I'm telling you this. But it's 20 years later. I figure the statute of limitations is over. Today, he is executive vice president for the Boston Red Sox. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you so much, Mark. Hi, everybody. So this is my 15th year with the Boston Red Sox, and before this job, I was your first assistant attorney general, and before that, I worked in the Senate, as Mark said, at the time, including when Goodrich was decided. And it's really a great honor to be here today with so many leaders and many friends for this special anniversary. Now, 2004 was a truly historic, epic year in Massachusetts. In May, same-sex couples began marrying. And yes, in October, the Red Sox won the World Series for the first time in 86 years. And I think some people believe that freedom to marry might have had a role in reversing the curse. But so many of you worked so tirelessly and courageously to blaze the trail 2 decades ago for a more equal and just society for same-sex couples and their families. Yet freedom to marry enriches the lives of all the people in our state, all non-LGBTQ people who can celebrate the love and commitment of our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues at work. And the business community has a lot to celebrate too. We know that we are better and stronger when all people are included. At Fenway Park, it made so many feel like finally, this one element of inequality that so many of our employees and fans have experienced, a far worse curse, was finally rectified. Now, since same-sex marriage has been legal, we featured same-sex marriage proposals on the Jumbotron video board. And at Fenway Park, you have 37,000 people loudly cheering for 2 people who say yes to each other. Every June, we have our annual Red Sox Pride Night. Fans decked out in rainbow versions of Red Sox hats and jerseys, coming together at Fenway Park to just watch a ball game and have fun, proudly celebrating who they are. This year's Pride Night on June 11th is going to be especially special for us because our hero, Mary Bonauto, is throwing out the ceremonial first pitch. But as Mary said in her video, none of this was inevitable. When I worked in the Senate in 2003, when Goodrich was decided, there were many strong leaders for equal rights and equality, but the majority of reps and senators were not ready to support full equal marriage. They were not ready, and they would have voted to repeal equal marriage rights. When I worked afterwards in the AG's office in 2007 with Maura Healey, we considered and pursued a challenge to the Federal Defense of Marriage Act, which impacted couples here and across the nation. And experts and law professors called us and said, this case is unprecedented and you're probably going to lose. And the fight for full equality, the fight for love over hate is never done. In recent years, here and around the nation, we've seen an explosion of hate incidents and speech. anti-LGBTQ hate, especially against trans people, racism against blacks, Asian hate, hate against Latinos and immigrants, anti-Semitic hate against Jews, a surge in hate of all kinds. To combat and defeat all forms of hate, we need to be a team. We need to support each other, we need to stand up, and we need to be allies to each other. We need each other. And so today is a happy day to celebrate respect, freedom, equality, and love, and above all, to celebrate the amazing team effort from all of you, all of us, that went into making Massachusetts a state of such enormous pride. Thank you.
Hi, so we're going a little off script, and we're not doing the video. My name is Tanya Neslusan, and I am the current Executive Director of Mass Equality. I want to begin by saying thank you for all of you who bravely led the way in this fight. And I remember that time. It wasn't an easy fight. You made it possible for my family to exist. You made it possible for my son to grow up in a world where getting married to whichever partner he chose was always a possibility. And I am humbled and I am grateful to you for all of that. When we look at where we are now and where we were then, we need to start with back when I was younger. The LGBTQ community called ourselves family. And like every family, there were a lot of personality conflicts, a lot of disagreements, but we kept it in the house. And when the going got tough, we banded together against the world. We couldn't have done it without coming together as a family. And we couldn't have done it without our allies. But much like marriage, a day of celebration like today does not mark the end of a journey, but rather the beginning of one. And there are going to be hills and there are going to be valleys. And we will move through them together, but only if we come together, because we still have many miles to go. We still have huge barriers facing us with regard to transgender healthcare, racial disparities in PrEP and PEP access, youth homelessness. Massachusetts is fourth in the nation in attempts to ban books right now. And the one thing we always kick down the road, housing and healthcare for our LGBTQ elders. We need to come together in this fight. I also want to talk about what the next natural step after getting married traditionally is. And that's having kids, becoming a family, raising those little ones together. And Massachusetts has extremely outdated parenting laws. We need to pass the Mass Parentage Act right now. So Marc talked about postcards a little bit earlier. We got some new postcards for you all. When you go back and you get your coffee and your cupcakes and your snacks, take a minute to fill these out, because we need everyone's voices out there advocating so that we can form our families without barriers, so that we can protect our young people, so we can protect parents, so that we can form our families. And as I end my remarks, I just want to say, we're still fighting. We need to come together. So please, please remember that as far as we've come, we're still going. And along those lines, I would like to introduce the next speaker. And I apologize if I mispronounce it. I've been practicing. Adelia D., who is the Youth Leadership Co-Chair at Bagley. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I want to start by saying thank you to Tanya, and thank you to everyone here today and all those who made this historic moment possible. As a kid, I had big dreams of getting married. I dedicated pages of my notebooks to sketches of dresses for myself and my bridesmaids. I envisioned a beautiful ring, a Cinderella dress, and walking down the aisle. Despite having the choice to marry whomever I wanted, I felt that a married version of myself and a queer version of myself could not coexist. I saw marriage as a site of confrontation, an event where I would have to come to reality with my queerness. I grappled with questions about what I would wear if it wasn't a dress, what I would wear if it wasn't a dress, who I would marry if it wasn't a man, and who would even come to my wedding. Then I fell in love, and more than anything, I want to marry them, become their family, build life with them. Our love has been so transformative that it has made me reimagine what I thought was impossible. At the core of queer liberation lies this radical act of queer love. The more I learn about the queer liberation movement, the more I see these acts of love reshape our culture. For instance, I stand here before you today representing Bagley, the Boston Alliance for LGBTQ+ Youth, an organization founded as a labor of queer love to provide social support for queer youth. Bagley has been a pioneer in uplifting the voices of LGBTQ+ youth, offering not just community, but opportunities for leadership and social services to address the disparities experienced by queer youth. Another powerful example of the transformative power of queer love is the reason we are gathered here today. This landmark case represents a radical assertion of queer love that demanded to be recognized by the state. Now more than ever, as we witness states restrict the rights of the queer community, notably transgender and non-binary individuals, it is critical that we embody radical queer love. Radical queer love encompasses more than just the freedom to marry whomever we choose. It also involves ensuring that queer individuals have the support they need, not only to survive, but to thrive. We must continue to prioritize those who have been marginalized and recognize that our liberation is intertwined with one another, so we may envision a world of true queer liberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adelia, for those remarks, and thank you for all of the work that you and others do at Bagley, which is an organization that's been very important to me. First of all, I want to say, keep the faith. There's only 3 minutes between me and cupcakes. I'm Ben Klein. I'm Senior Director of Litigation and HIV Law at GLAD. Thank you. 45 years ago, just out of the closet and slightly terrified, I walked into this church to attend my first meeting of Boston's LGBTQ youth group, the predecessor to Bagley, which was called the Committee for Gay Youth. Thank you to the Arlington Street Church. Thank you. Which has always been a haven for our community, especially in those years when few others would have us. Growing up in the silence and invisibility of the 1960s and 1970s, when I first came out, I could not say the word gay. So I emotionally confided in a close friend. There's something I've been wanting to tell you. I'm not heterosexual. I could not say the word because I grew up in a world that did not want me to exist. Living through the early years of the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s and 1990s, I knew the stories of loving gay men caring for their dying partners in a world in which there was no legal recognition for their relationships. Stories of people who were denied hospital visitation, stories of families with estranged sons and siblings who passed away, swooping in to take control of the body and deny their surviving partner even attendance at the funeral. Later at GLAD, I heard stories about transgender people who had their long-standing, long-term marriages invalidated because judges did not recognize their transition and improperly consider them to be a same-sex couple at the time. So today, we celebrate that the Goodrich decision transformed our law, it transformed our politics, it transformed our place in society, it transformed the world that young LGBTQ people can grow up in. But let's not forget, and we are very mindful at GLAD, the marriage equality movement was never intended to be the end point of our movement for liberation. GLAD is right now fighting dangerous and draconian laws in Florida and Alabama, 2 of 24 states that have passed laws banning gender transition medical care for adolescents. Not just banning, but criminalizing. Those states are not concerned about quality medical care. They want to ban gender transition because they do not want transgender people to exist. Our movement for liberation must build a world in which transgender people and all LGBTQ people can not just exist, but thrive. And we have work to do, even here in Massachusetts. When a police officer shows up in a middle school classroom in Great Barrington to search for the book Genderqueer, we are not living in a world here in Massachusetts that values young LGBTQ people. When members of the Proud Boys shut down a drag queen story hour, what they're really objecting to is the existence of queer people whose path to liberation is not through the gender binary. When 20 years after marriage equality, some LGBTQ parents still have to adopt their own children in order to secure their families, we need to pass the Massachusetts Parentage Act. And when 40 years into the AIDS epidemic, we have a medication that prevents HIV transmission by close to 100%, but half the people in Massachusetts who need it don't have it. We need to pass laws to expand access to PrEP. And, as we all know, when we live in a world in which the Supreme Court can overturn Roe v. Wade, we cannot be complacent. And GLAD is prepared and is doing the work right now to defend the Obergefell decision against any threat. So I know that all of you know this, but as we celebrate today, we have to stay engaged in the courts, in the political system, and in our communities. So thank you so much to everybody. This has been such a wonderful program and a wonderful day. And I will now turn things back over to Marc.
So just a few more thanks. So much gratitude for so many. I want to thank the incredible team at Arlington Street Church who were so helpful and hospitable throughout all of this. Reverend Kim Crawford Harvie and the whole team here was incredible. I want to thank the I want to thank two people who were indispensable in pulling this event together. GLAD's Amanda Johnston and my colleague Adam. And my colleague, Adam Pulaski. You can see the two of them sitting right here watching over us. I want to thank Art Nava, who is working on the AV and tech side of things. to Triana Wilson for sharing her musical talents, to all of the speakers, to the partner organizations, and most especially, thanks to all of you for coming here to share your memories, celebrating this great achievement, and toast to 20 years. We are going to now file out. There are cupcakes, there's coffee, there are other things in the room over here. And as you do it, Triana is going to share some more music. And there's also a beautiful retrospective video that you can watch in here, get some cupcakes, coffee. You can't bring food in here, I'm told. So eat your cupcakes, drink your coffee, come back, watch the video. We can also share the video on social media for those who aren't able to watch. But again, thank you so much. Happy anniversary.
Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.